Hi everyone, this is Mr. Zhang, and today we'll be going over the final for ELA, and this is for Exam 1, Form SWH. Alright, so for the first page, we have to choose a best word to complete each of these sentences. So, for number 1, the sentence reads, "The senator's plan was highly blank. Congress held intense debates about it for days." So here we're looking for a word that describes the senator's plan. And now, this plan actually caused Congress, which is our governing body that makes laws, to debate intensely about it. So what this means was that this plan wasn't super popular, because if it was really popular, then it would be really easy to pass. So we're looking for something that kind of means like not popular. So just by going through the list of words, we can see that choice A, agreeable, choice B, optimistic, and choice C, beneficial. These are all kind of synonyms in terms of them being just positive words. So if a proposal for a law was agreeable and optimistic and beneficial, then it would be really easy to pass. So these are all three positive words. That would mean the law would be easily passed. And this wasn't the case because they had intense debate about it for days. So we can eliminate A, B, and C. Now choice D has the word patriotic, and patriotic just means you're proud of your country. And here that, again, it's not really what we're looking for here. Again, we're looking for something that was not popular. So the best answer would be choice E. And controversial means that there's some people really like it, other people don't really like it. So it's already contentious. So controversial means contentious. So that means that it's not really easily passed. You can debate about it. So some people like it, some people really don't. So it's not 100% popular. It will be something like 50-50. So half the people like it, half the people hate it, and then they start debating about it for days. Next for number 2, since Angela dislikes scary movies, she blanked my invitation to see a new horror film together. So here we have the word since, and this transition word since signals cause and effect. And for this cause and effect, here we have the cause. She does not like scary movies. So now what did she do? Well, she's probably not going to go to see the scary movie with you. So she's going to, choice C, decline her offer, essentially not go, because she doesn't like them. So if you don't like scary movies, then you won't go watch a horror movie because they're scary. So it'll be choice C. Decline means to say no. So it's the opposite of A. Accepted means say yes. And bought means like you kind of buy the invitation, which again, not what we're looking for here. Implemented and frightened don't really make sense. Frightened does mean scared. However, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for this invitation. So she declined the invitation. She said no to the invitation. So she's going to watch something else. Next for number 3, the two tribes have been at war for hundreds of years. All attempts to forge peace and end the conflict have been blank. So here, these are two tribes or two groups, and they're at war. So they don't like each other. So if they don't like each other, all attempts to forge peace. Forge means to create. So you're trying to make peace and end the conflict, have been basically looking for something that says unsuccessful. So it didn't work. So if you go through all the choices, the word that means pointless or unsuccessful is choice A, fruitless. Fruitless, it's kind of like if you have a tree and it bears fruit, that means it's useful. If you have a tree that is fruitless, it's kind of useless because you can't eat, the leaves or anything. So fruitless just means useless or pointless, like a waste of time. So there's no point in, if you are a farmer, there's no point in caring for this tree that doesn't give you any food. Whereas if there's another tree, like an apple tree that gives you food, then you'd rather take care of the apple tree. Belligerent just means war or just fighting. And then we don't want effective, useful, because this piece didn't work. So effective and useful means it works successfully, and we don't want that. We want the opposite of that. So the best answer is choice A for number 3. Next, for number 4, Taylor has a tendency to blank the truth. As a result, it's hard to blank the things he says. So we have 2 blanks here, and you want to look at the relationship between these 2 sentences. So here, it's hard to, we can kind of just use everyday words. So he has a tendency, or he tends to, let's say we can bend the truth. So he doesn't really tell the truth. He lies a lot. And because of this, as a result, signals supporting evidence. So as such, it's hard to believe the things that he says. So here we can see it's hard to believe is okay. Wouldn't be doubt. Trust would be okay too. Disprove, that could be okay. And then imagine, it doesn't really work. You're not really imagining the things that he says. So between A, C, and D. And then for the first blank, you want to something like bend the truth or not tell the truth. So he's not going to tell the truth. You don't really invent the truth. Or uphold. So manipulate and exaggerate would be okay. And the one that has blanks that would be okay for both would be choice A. So when you exaggerate the truth, that means you're going really extreme. And you're kind of making something seem bigger than it is. Seem larger or more interesting than reality. It's kind of like lying, because normally if you, let's say, had, if you saw, 10 birds, flying in a flock, if you exaggerate the truth, you say, oh, wow, I saw 100 birds flying in a flock. You didn't see 100 birds, you saw a lot of birds, you only saw 10, but when you exaggerate, you're kind of lying and pretending that those 10 birds were like 100 birds, which just makes it, technically it's a lie, but, basically the meaning behind it is I saw a lot of birds. All right, next for number 5. The Olympic Games draw superior blank from around the world. Each competitor represents his or her blank, so winning a gold medal in any sport becomes a matter of national pride. So the Olympic Games, these are games held every 4 years. Well, for the summer Olympic Games, you also have ones in the winter every 4 years. And this is an international competition. So you compete for gold in sports like swimming, track and field, running, archery, and you have disc throwing and all that stuff. So it started all the way back when in ancient Greece. So here you have to have superior athletes or competitors from around the world, and each competitor represents his or her country or nation or team. All right, so you go through all the choices and see which ones are synonyms here. So the first blank, you have like athletes or people who compete. So players would be okay. Athletes would be okay. Gymnasts could be okay too, but it's not just for gymnasts because you have swimmers and you have archers and everything. And coaches wouldn't work and events won't work. Now each competitor represents his or her country. So country would be fine. You could also say nation, but we see choice C is probably the best because it sounds, again, the most natural. Next, for number 6, the invention of the polio vaccine has blanked the disease in most parts of the world. Almost no one suffers from polio in developed countries anymore. So we're looking for a word to fill in the blank. That means that this vaccine, which helps prevent a disease, polio, which is really bad disease in which people could actually get it from like swimming in a lake or something, and then when you get an infection from this polio virus, what happens is they could lose, it attacks their nerves, and what happens is you can become paralyzed. So, for example, a lot of children will go swimming in a lake, and then they would be paralyzed, so they can't walk for the rest of their life, which is pretty scary to think about. FDR, one of the presidents, Roosevelt, actually had polio, and that's why he was in a wheelchair, because it affected his nerves. So it's a really deadly disease that really impacts your life, and it's a good thing that it's been eradicated, or it's been, so eradicated would be the best. It means to disappear, to eliminate. So it's been virtually eliminated from most parts of the world. Although now it's been coming back because there's this, anti-vaccine belief for a lot of people, and then it's coming back, which is unfortunate. But again, choice E is the best answer here. Next, for number 7, the theater critic wrote blank review of the new play. Attendance decreased, and the show was canceled not long thereafter. All right, so a critic criticizes or reviews shows. So it could be TV shows, movies, and stuff, and they just write their opinion about it. So if something was good, something was bad, and then the idea is if a lot of reviewers or critics say that it was good, then the audience might think it's good too, and they might go watch the movie. So it's helpful to, see what they think, and then it can help you make a decision. Of course, you might like something that they don't like, or you might dislike something that critics do like, but again, it's just a suggestion. So what happened here was the theater critic wrote a review, and then attendance decreased, and the show was canceled. So this review is probably a bad review. He wrote a really bad review because people stopped going to see the show. So it wouldn't be glowing. Glowing means a great review. Raving also means good. Exquisite means like amazing, it's really good. And the best, irate just means angry. But it doesn't really work here. You don't really write an angry review. It would be choice E, disapproving review. So that means that you did not like this play. And then people also saw that, this really famous person didn't like it, this critic didn't like it, so I'm not going to go see it because I heard it was bad or something like that. All right, next for number 8, I always cry at blank. I feel overcome with blank when watching two people declare their love for one another. All right, so here you want to figure out what feeling you have when you're overcoming with something, when you have two people declaring their love for each other. So when two people declare their love for each other, that's a positive word. In the second blank, so it's not going to be sadness or anxiety. So it would be emotion or joy. So that would be, that would work. And then here, when two people declare love for each other, that would be at weddings. That would be the most appropriate. That's choice D. So this person always cries at weddings because they're overcome with emotion when two people declare their love for each other and get married. All right, and here's a summary for this page. All right, so now we start with the reading comprehension. So here you have to read the text and then answer the questions. So again, it's really helpful to preview the questions first. So here, if we look through the questions really quickly, Morgan will not do something to help her mom. For number 10, when is the text set? So this is your setting. For number 11, you want the root word in the word organize. You want to look for the word organized. And then 12 is a synonym, which means same meaning, for ready. And finally, what does it mean to run errands? So it's going to be helpful when we go back to the text. All right, so here, the story says Morgan was helping out at her mother's photography studio. She knew she wasn't ready to actually take pictures, but she didn't want to just sit and watch. So she asked her mother what she would be doing. She was hoping it would be interesting. Mom told her, you can keep the studio rooms clean and organized. That's really important. If they're a mess, people won't want to get their pictures taken, and it'll be harder to find the props we need. You can also run errands and call customers when their pictures are ready. These are important things, too. I'm going to be awfully busy, said Morgan, but she didn't mind at all. It all sounded interesting. Right, so it's a really short passage. And here, for number 9, which will Morgan not do to help her mom? So the things that Morgan's doing to help her mom is in paragraph 2 here. So the mom wants Morgan to keep the studios clean and organized. So again, that's choice A. We don't want that. Next, you also want to run errands. That's choice D. And then finally, you can call customers when the pictures are ready. So here's the process of elimination. It has to be choice C. She will not be taking pictures. And we also have that here. She knew she wasn't ready to actually take pictures, and the mom agreed. And so the mom gave Morgan other things to do. Next, for number 10, when is the text set? So when tells you about the setting. So if you look at here, if you want past, present, or future, you want to look for the verb tenses. So the verbs here, you have was, knew, asked. Here you have told. All these action words are in the past tense, so it's going to be choice A. This text happened in the past. Next, for number 11, the root word in organize is, so when you have a root word, this is the main part of the word. And you see that in the word organize, you have another word in there, which is organ. So an organ is like a part of your body, and they're really organized because they all work together to make your body function, to make your body, work and keep you alive. So something that's organized is very neat and arranged really well so they can work together, just like the organs in your body. Next, for number 12, a synonym for ready is, so here we have she wasn't ready over here. So ready, in this case, would mean prepared. She wasn't prepared to do the photo taking yet. So she's still learning. So here she's not ready. So she's not prepared yet. Later in the future, she might be prepared. But as of now, she is not prepared. And finally, number 13, to run errands. Over here, to run errands in paragraph 2. That means to do some chores. All right, and that's choice D. So errands are chores or tasks that you have to do. So, for example, you have, cleaning dishes, vacuuming, wiping down the dust. All of these would be errands that you would have to do, in addition to, going to a grocery store, etc. All right, and here's a summary for this page. All right, so let's continue the story. So again, here we have to look at the questions first. So number 14, what does Morgan not do to help with the photo shoot? Think about the author's purpose for number 15. For number 16, how might the story be different if there were no babies in a family? And 17, how does Morgan feel when her mom says she did a super job? And number 18, people who like blank might not want to be photographers. And finally, what summarizes the main theme for this text? Let's continue the story. Smile for the camera. So Morgan was helping out at her mother's photography studio. She had been working hard there and learning for a few weeks. Her mom said that Morgan did a great job. The other photographers agreed, and one day Morgan asked her mom if she could help take a picture. I know I'm not ready to use the equipment by myself, she said, but could I at least help? I suppose so, her mom said. I have a family coming in at noon today. You can help with that photo session. So Morgan was excited to meet the family and get started. And when they got there, her mom introduced herself. She also introduced Morgan. Then they started to plan the pictures. The first thing to think about was how many people would be in the pictures. There were 5 people in this family, and they also had to think about the ages of the children. There were 3 kids and 1 was a baby. So Morgan guessed they would use the toys to make the baby smile. Now it's time to choose the background. Morgan and her mom talked to the family about which color they wanted. The family wanted a light color. Her mom thought that was a good idea. So Morgan suggested a pale blue. Everyone said that was their right choice. Next, her mom got the camera, and when the camera was set up, her mom had the family sit in several different poses. She took pictures of each pose. While her mom took the pictures, Morgan used some of the toys to make the baby laugh and smile. When her mom was done, she asked the family to wait a few minutes. Then she put the film disc in a computer and made a file with all of these poses. Morgan told the family when her mom was ready for them, when the mom was ready for them. Then the family chose the pictures they wanted. Morgan wrote down their order on a order form, and the family thanked Morgan and her mom and left. Her mom said, "You did a super job, Morgan. Maybe you'll be a photographer yourself when you're older." All right, so we finished that story, and now we can answer these questions. So again, 14 says, what does Morgan not do with the photo shoot? So again, you have to look back to the text and match all the choices there. So to help choose the background. All right, so over here we see that Morgan suggested pale blue, so she definitely chose the background. That's the A is incorrect. We're looking for one that she did not do. B says she gets lunch for everyone. Nowhere here do you see lunch at all, so we can probably assume that B is the answer. Let's put a squiggly line there. A bunch of squiggly lines. Next, for choice C, you have make the baby laugh, and again, that was true. So here, while Morgan was getting some toys, her mom was taking pictures. We can eliminate choice C. And for choice D, we want to write, does she write down the family's orders? And again, yes, she does. Morgan wrote down their order on an order form. So the answer has to be choice B. She doesn't get lunch for everyone. Next, for number 15, what is the author's purpose? So here, these author's purpose questions, you have to think about the passage as a whole. And as a whole, this passage wasn't to teach you about something. It wasn't to instruct or persuade you to do something. It was for entertainment. You can see Morgan and her struggles and how she overcame the struggles and helped out her mom at the photo studio. Next, for number 16, how might this story be different if there were no babies in a family? So remember, because there were babies in a family, or because there was at least one baby, rather, Morgan had to get the toys to make the baby laugh and smile. Now, if there weren't any babies, then they would just respond accordingly to your verbal commands. So here, Morgan probably would not use the toys. The toys are for the babies to make them laugh. Next, for number 17, How does Morgan probably feel when her mom says she did a super job? So here the keyword is probably, so you have to make an inference, which is an educated guess about the past or present. So in this case, if someone tells you how well of a job you did, then of course you should feel choice A, proud, which means you're happy of your own work. You should be proud, and you have a feeling of intense pride. So that means that you're just really, really happy about your work. Next, for number 18, people who like blank might want to be photographers. So here, if you think about photography and you have to take pictures of things, then that's very similar to choice C, which is art. Because art, you already have images already set up, and then you have to frame them and take pictures. So if you like art, also might like photography. Photography is actually a topic in art, in digital photography, for example. So number 19 says, which summarizes the theme of this text? So theme is the main idea. So you have to think about the story as a whole and have to see which one of these will summarize the theme. So if you think about what Morgan did, over here, we see that Morgan put in a lot of work. So she ran a lot of errands. And after putting in all this hard work, she actually didn't complain about it, because some people complain about it and aren't happy about it, but Morgan didn't mind at all. She was happy about all this work. It was interesting. And after doing this for a while, it turns out that even though she couldn't use the camera, she did take more responsibilities here. And when you take responsibility and then do all these more important jobs, then you feel really accomplished, and she felt really proud. So here, the best answer would be choice C. You can earn trust after putting in hard work. So here, she earned trust from her mom after doing all the little things to help her. After doing that and not, complaining about it, then her mom is going to trust Morgan to take on more responsibilities by helping with the photos. So the best answer is choice C here. All right, and here's a summary for this page. All right, the next passage has to do with World War II or D-Day. And D-Day is a really important day in which, well, you'll see what happens. But basically a really important invasion of France. All right, so here we kind of have a journal entry, like a social studies journal entry. And let's again go through the questions first. So here for number 20, this passage could be what genre? So genre is like what subject? And then which of the following happened first? So you have to go in order, chronological events. Number 22, the purpose, of the stage invasion of Calais was to do something. So look for the keyword Calais when we are reading the text. For number 23, where did the soldiers invade France? So look for France invasion. And then what is this passage mostly about? All right, so the journal entry for May 30th, 1944. It's probably based off of a soldier's perspective. So today we finally moved. The action has begun. For the past few months, I have been in England. We have trained and studied. Now it is time to go. The code name for our movement is Operation Overlord. I do not know when we will strike the Germans. I do know that our ultimate hope, months from now, is to liberate Paris. But first, we need to get our foot in the door of Europe. I am afraid that Germany will slam the door in our face. Germany now controls most of the continent, but we will win. Then a couple days later, June 5th, 1944, we have left Britain now. We're heading towards the coast of France. The English Channel is rough and choppy. Our ship rocks back and forth. The air is foggy outside, but very few men go up on the deck of the ship anyway. We're all kept below to prepare for the fight. Most of the men are quiet and keep to themselves. We know that our job is necessary, but we also know that many of us will die. It is clear now that we will invade France on the beaches of Normandy. By morning, we will have landed. And who knows how long the fight will take, or who will survive. Anything is possible for us, except defeat. We will win. Alright, and then the next day, on June 6, 1944, today was the hardest day of my life, but we are succeeding. Over 150,000 Allied troops and 5,000 ships landed together along the coast of Normandy. We fought the waves to reach the shore and fought for every inch of sand up to the hills. We had nowhere to retreat except to the cold ocean. Our only choice was to push forward and make the Germans move backwards. I found out that our generals had staged an invasion in Calais. Thousands of rubber tanks landed, empty of course, in that town far away from here. While the Germans tried to defend themselves against balloons, we stormed the beaches here. Thank goodness for the distraction. I cannot imagine what today would have been like with more German troops facing us. In the last entry on August 1944, Paris is ours. Today, Allied soldiers marched into Paris and liberated France. After 40 years of German occupation, Paris is finally free. So here we have the perspective of a soldier who is in this operation, this military operation to free Paris and France from German control. So for number 20, this passage could be an example of which genre. So a genre, again, is a subject. So, of course, this isn't a science fiction or a sci-fi passage, because that would be, sci-fi would have aliens and spaceships and space travel. And we don't really have that here, so it's not science fiction. B says it's a mystery, and it's not a mystery novel. There's no, like, murder or something. You have to solve who did the murder. Choice C says it's a historical fiction. So we do see history in here, but C has fiction. Now, we don't know if this is a fictitious or if this person was actually real, but again, history is a big red flag here. That tells you it's probably the correct answer. And finally, choice D is fantasy. So fantasy means just fiction, make-believe. And here, it's not based in some random nonsense. It's actually based in some fact, because this actually did happen. So this is an example of choice C, historical fiction. Okay, we're using history, but to generate stories from that historical context that may or may not have happened. All right, next for number 21, which of the following happened first? So you have to go through and find the supporting details here. So Paris is ours. That happened in 1944 in August. B says an invasion was staged in Calais, and that was over here. This is June 6, 1944. Choice C says a few months of training in England. So the training happened early on here. So that did happen super early. You have trained and studied. That's March 30th. And finally, 3,000 ships landed on the beaches of Normandy. So the ships landed over here. So after June 5th, it's June 6th. It's the day after that. Either way, the first that happened, in this case, is choice C. So you were training in England before you stormed Normandy, which makes sense. So you have to train or practice. Next, for number 22, the purpose of the stage invasion in Calais was to, so again here, this invasion of Calais, this was a distraction. So by having this distraction, then the troops would go over there and leave the actual place of invasion undefended. So again, this was to distract the Germans, choice A. Next one, number 23. Where did the soldiers invade France? So we can see soldiers invaded France over here by the beach, on the beaches of Normandy. So the best answer here would be choice B. And finally, the passage is mostly about, and here this is, again, a soldier recounting his experience of World War II. So this is a narrative or a journal. Notice for this narrative or journal, this uses what's called first person voice. And first person voice uses words like I, me, my, or mine, or we, or our. So again, these are first person accounts, and there might be some bias in here, but again, it was historical fiction, so the actual experience probably didn't happen, but a similar experience happened to a lot of these soldiers on D-Day. All right, and here's a summary for this page. All right, next up we have a poem. And remember, when you have poems, you have to think about the hidden meaning that the author's trying to say behind the words that they use. So here, again, we're going to preview the questions. For 25, which direction is the goose flying in the poem? So we have this goose, and we're going to figure out the direction. And now for 26, what does the first verse of the poem describe? So the first verse is the first paragraph. That's over here, or the first section. So that's for number 26. And next for 27, the people who maintain that geese are silly are suffering in cold weather. Which word or phrase in the poem best supports this conclusion? Right, so we have to go back to the text and we have to think about suffering in cold weather. So something about the geese being cold. Next for 28, how can the land where the goose is headed best be described? So this goose is flying to a different land, and you want to figure out this new land / destination. And next for number 29, what is this poem about? So this is the main idea. And for number 30, you have to read the lines in the poem. And why might the poet have used the word basque and lush in the description of the land? So I want to look for basque and lush. So we can see that here in context. That's over here. And that's for question number 30. And finally, for number 31, throughout the text, whom or what does the word he refer to? So when I look for the word he. All right, so let's start with the poem. So this poem is called Wild Goose by Curtis Heath. So the poem starts, he climbs the wind above, green clouds of pine, honking to hail the gathering migration, and, arching towards the south, pulls to a line his flight into the great spearhead formation. He'll find a bayou land of hidden pools, and bask amid lush fern and water lily, far from the frozen world of earthbound fools, who, shivering, maintain that geese are silly. All right, so here, when we're looking at this poem, we have to look for the rhyme scheme here. So here we can see that we do have some rhyming. For example, we have the word migration, formation, and then lily, silly. So we have those that rhyme. And then we also have pine, a line, pools, and fools. So here we have like every other line will rhyme. So it's like red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. All right, so there's the rhyming pattern there. And when we're looking over here, the climbing above the green clouds of pine, here we're using clouds, again, to symbolize these pine trees, this forest. So we have a forest of pine trees, and they're really densely packed together, so they're so close together that it looks like a cloud of just pine trees. And now this goose is honking to hail the gathering migration. So geese, they migrate south like other birds. So birds migrate south during the winter, or some birds migrate south during the winter for warmer weather. So otherwise they might not be able to survive in the cold. So what this bird is doing is, this goose is arching towards the south, over here, and then it's gonna align the flight into a great spearhead formation. So the spearhead formation is also known as this echelon formation. So you often see something that looks like this. We have the first bird, and they form this arrow, and they're flying this way. So that's a spearhead formation that we're talking about. In the next stanza, we have this bayou, and a bayou is a swamp. And a swamp is really hot, it's muggy, and it's really humid. So it's perfect for birds because there's water, there are insects, so there's food, and it's really hot, so it's perfect. It's a perfect environment for birds. So you'll find a bayou land of hidden pools. So these are lakes in this swamp. And it's going to bask amid the lush fern and water lily. So here, make sure we're focusing on the words basking and lush. So this tells you it's a really warm environment. When you see lush ferns and you're basking in the sun, that means that you're kind of like in paradise. So it evokes this image of paradise where you have really nice weather, the sun's always out, and you're just basking in the sun. And this is really far from the frozen world of the earthbound fools. This part refers to people who don't migrate, or animals who don't migrate, like humans, for example. So we're earthbound, so we're stuck on the ground, and it's frozen because it's winter. And these earthbound fools, those people who were shivering, maintain that geese are silly. So it's kind of ironic here. So there's some irony in which the author is using to indicate that it's kind of funny how the people who don't migrate call geese silly, but the geese are basking in the sun amid the water lilies and lush fern. So who's being silly here? So again, here's the annotation of this poem. All right, so for 25, which direction is the goose flying in the poem? So here, you can take a look at line 6. The goose is flying south. And that's for hibernation. Or, excuse me, not hibernation, for migration. Next one, number 26. What does the first verse of the poem describe? So the first verse is here. He climbs the wind above, green clouds of pine. So this describes the setting. So here, this will be not the weather, but it will be the landscape. of the goose's home. So this is the setting where the goose lives among the pine trees. It's not about the movements in flight. It's also not about the physical features of the goose. We're not describing the goose. So again, there's a metaphor here because you're comparing this forest of pine trees to clouds. Yeah, that's a physical setting. Next, 427, the people who maintain that geese are silly are suffering in cold weather. Which word or phrase from the poem best supports this conclusion? So here we see, of course, cold weather. That refers to the shivering in line 15. And shivering means that you're shaking in cold weather to try to warm up. So this is referring to the people who are shivering, who are laughing at this goose for migrating, but the goose is kind of like laughing back at the people who are calling the goose silly because, the humans aren't migrating, so they're freezing in the winter, whereas the goose is basking in the sun. A lot of there's irony there that the poet used. Next, for number 28, how can the land where the goose is headed be best described? So the land is this new land, and remember this is south. And in the south, we can see over here, this refers to this bayou land, the swamp. You have ferns and water lilies. So a lot of plants and water and stuff. So here, this is this bayou, which is like a swamp. So this is warm and wet with a lot of plant life. So just over a swamp. Next one, number 29. What is the poem mostly about? This is the main idea question. So think about the poem as a whole. It's not about the science of how geese and other flies. It's not about scientific poem. It's not about the frozen landscape of the northern land. So we do mention the north is cold, but we're not really talking, that's not the main focus. That's just a supporting detail. We're really talking about here, choice C, the migration of geese to places with warmer weather. It's about migrating south. And then D is also incorrect because it's not about why people think geese are silly. That's just the last line, so that's a supporting detail that the author used to use some irony in this situation. And the best answer here, the main idea of what this poem is about choice C. It's a migration of geese to places with warmer weather. Next, for number 30, read the lines from the poem. You'll find a bayou land of hidden pools and bask amid lush fern and water lily. Why might the poets have used the word bask and lush in the description of the land the goose is flying towards? So here, remember, you're basking in the sun, and you have lush ferns, so just really nice plant life. Again, this is to tell you, to show that this land is awesome. For this geese. So it's not that the geese prefers land that's closer to water. It's also not to show that geese is unhappy, because geese would be very happy. It would be the opposite. It's also not to indicate the cold weather. Remember, it's lush and bask means it's warm. So it's choice D, to emphasize, which means to really state and really focus on. Focus your attention to. On the fact that this new land, that's south, is so much better than the cold winter land up north. So the geese has made a really good decision here by migrating. Finally, for number 31, throughout the text, whom or what does the word he refer to? So he, of course, refers to the subject, which is the goose. So that's choice C. So you can take a look here. He climbs the wind, so he's flying. He's arching towards the south, his flight, so it's a geese that's flying, and he'll find a land and bask in the sun and the lush fern, and then, so again, he is a goose. All right, and here's a summary for this page. And this page. All right, for the last passage, we have these three paragraphs. It's a little more challenging than the other ones. But again, let's take a look at the questions. So 32, the word bound in line 1 is closest to. So let's underline the word bound. So we'll focus on that. It's for number 32. Next to 33, the National Republican Party is mentioned in line 8. So let's go to line 8 for the National Republican Party. It's for 33. Next to 34, the word assembling in line 14. So we have to line up assembling. That's Q34. And then 35, the word ones in line 16. We see ones here. The word it in line 22. It's over here, question 36. And then it can refer from the passage that early hotel keepers, so it's about hotel keepers, basically people who own hotels and keep hotels nice and tidy, and which of the following statements about early American hotels is not mentioned. So that's a supporting detail question. All right, so let's read this passage on hotels. So this passage begins, hotels are among the earliest facilities that bound the United States together. They were both creatures and creators of the communities, as well as symptoms of the frenetic quest for community. Even in the first part of the 19th century, Americans were already forming the habit of gathering from all corners of the nation for both public and private, business and pleasure purposes. Conventions were the new occasions, and hotels were distinctively American facilities, making conventions possible. The first national convention of a major party to choose a candidate for president, that of the National Republican Party, which met on December 12, 1831, nominated Henry Clay for president, was held in Baltimore at a hotel that was then reputed to be the best in the country. The presence in Baltimore of Barnum's City Hotel, a 6-story building with 200 apartments, helps explain why many other national political conventions were held there. So here we have this paragraph talking about why hotels came to be. So it's a history of hotels. And we see that they're both creatures and creators of the community. And what that means is they were created by the community, and they kind of created the community as well. So the community made them, but they also needed them. So here, in this case, you have these conventions. And these conventions are just events for a specific purpose. So here, usually it's to sell you stuff. So if there's a convention on books, then you would have an author come in and do a book signing and trying to sell you a bunch of books, and then people would wait in line, talk to other people who like this author, and get their book signed, and people's autograph and take pictures and stuff like that. So you have a convention for technology. So you have all these companies putting in their new phones and laptops and tablets, and then you can just check them out, and it's kind of like a really big showcase. You also have them for politics. It said here the National Republican Party in 1831 was the first one to do one of these conventions in a hotel. So hotels are really accessible places because they can facilitate those kind of meetings. All right, next, in the longer run, American hotels made other national conventions not only possible, but pleasant and convivial. The growing custom of regularly assembling from afar the representatives of all kinds of groups, not only for political conventions, but also for commercial, professional, learned, and vocational ones, in turn supported the multiplying hotels. By the mid-20th century, conventions accounted for over a third of the yearly room occupancy of the hotels of the nation, and about 18,000 different conventions were held annually. with a total attendance of about 10 million persons. So here, this is, again, after the initial 1800s, hotels became pretty normal, and it made it really pleasant and convivial. So convivial just means pleasant, just friendly. So you can use context clues here. So meeting in a hotel is really nice because hotels will have amenities, they'll have bathrooms, they'll have food if you want it, they have staff waiting to help and help you set up and etc. They have really large rooms as well, like conference rooms, so that you can take advantage of that meeting space. And here you have some of the purposes, reasons for meeting in hotels. So it could be commercials, is the selling you stuff, for professionals, so for networking, which means when you network, you are meeting other people who are in the same field as you. So for example, if you're a teacher, then you can network with other teachers and just talk about, teaching as a job. And it's really helpful to get other people's opinions, and you can get contacts that way. And it's also avocational, so this is like for job seeking. So like job fairs. So if you want to find a new job, you have a lot of people who are hiring, employers who are hiring, and then they'll go to a convention in a hotel, and then people like you will go around and give in your resume and see if you can get hired. So here, because of all these reasons, by the mid-20th century, you have a whole bunch of hotels being occupied. Okay, over 18,000 conventions held annually, and you have 10 million people going. So that's a really big deal. This is the explosion of hotel in the U.S. All right, 19th century American hotel keepers who were no longer the genial, deferential hosts of the 18th century European inn became leading citizens. Holding a large stake in a community, they exercise power to make it prosper. As owners or managers of the local palace of the public, they were makers and shapers of a principal community attraction. Travelers from abroad were mildly shocked by this high social position. So here we have these hotel keepers, people who make sure the hotel is run efficiently and effectively, were now being leading citizens. So they got a lot of power. They received or got power. And what that means is they have a really big stake in the community, and they are trying to make sure that their hotel is being used effectively, and that's a good thing for the community because it offers jobs, offers a palace of the public, a place to visit, and travelers from abroad were actually shocked by how powerful they are. All right, so here's a little short summary of the history of hotels in the U.S. So let's go through the questions. Next, for 32, the word bound in line 1 is closest to. So let's go back to line 1. Hotels were among the earliest facilities that bound the U.S. together. So bound, in this case, means to tie. And when you tie everything together, you're kind of combining and bringing the U.S. together. So it's like uniting. So here we have choice C, tied, as the best answer. You're tying the United States together because here a lot of people went to hotels and it became this American phenomenon. Next, for 33, the National Republican Party is mentioned in line 8 as an example of a group. So here, let's look back to National Republican Party in line 33, or in line 8. Here, they were mentioned because they were the first national convention of a party to choose a president that was held at a hotel. So here is the first official convention, the first political convention. And when you have a political convention, basically the entire party, all the important people in the party, coming in to choose a candidate. You still have these every 4 years, to vote for presidents. So that's still something that stuck, even to this day. So here choice D, we're holding a convention at a hotel. It was a political convention, so it was a meeting. Next, for number 34, the word assembling in line 14 is closest in meaning to. Take a look at line 14. That's over here. The growing custom of regularly assembling from afar the representative of all kind of groups, not only for political conventions, but also for commercial, professional, learned, and avocational ones, supported the multiplying of hotels. So assembly means a meeting, or just joining together. So when you have this assembly, this meeting, all these representatives from a commercial group, a professional group, or from a job fair, they're all meeting together at this hotel. So that's what this assembly is. So assembly is like a meeting. So here it's choice C, a gathering. Assembling is like a meeting. Next one, number 35. The word ones in line 16 refer to. So here we have ones here. It's the same sentence. You have commercial, professional, learned, and avocational ones. So it's not just political conventions. It's also for commercial conventions or professional conventions. Ones refer to these conventions. So it's choice B. So you have political conventions. You have commercial ones, like a trade show. You have professional ones. You have avocational, so like a job fair. And these are all conventions. So ones is used as a pronoun to refer to these conventions. Next, for number 36, the word it in line 22 refers to. So we're going to have another pronoun in line 22 here. So read the sentence. Holding a large stake in the community, they, which is the hotel keepers, exercise power to make it prosper. So it refers to a thing, and the thing would be referring to this community. It has to refer to something either in the sentence, in the same sentence before it, or in the previous sentence. The first thing that we see that's a noun is community. So it refers to the community. So if you have a hotel in a community, the community is going to get a lot of money, it's going to prosper and become rich. So it refers to this community in choice C. Next, for 37, it can be inferred from the passage that early hotel keepers in the United States were. So again, here, when you have an inference, that means you're making an educated guess. So to look at the info from the text and then proceed to make an educated guess about what the author is implying or is trying to say between the lines. So these early hotel keepers, if you go through these early hotel keepers weren't politicians. Okay, nothing to say that they were, they were trying to be president or anything. Also, they weren't professional builders, so we don't have any instance of that, or also influential citizens, because they were not influential citizens yet. These early hotel keepers here, they were probably European immigrants, because we can see this referred to in line 21. The 19th century American hotel keepers were no longer the genial, old, deferential hosts of the 18th century European inn. So they used to be just regular European immigrants who used to keep an inn, which is like a really, really small hotel with like a couple rooms, and then they became these leading citizens. So this is in line 20 to 21. So here they were probably European immigrants who used to run an inn, and then they became more powerful and rose up in the ranks of the social and economic ladder. So they got power, they got money, because the hotels were really important in the US. So they became influential citizens, but they didn't start out as influential citizens. They started out as probably European immigrants. So again, 37 was kind of challenging because you have to make an inference, and an inference is an educated guess. So when you have this educated guess, you have to be careful and use the evidence from the text to make that assumption. Next, for number 38, which of the following statements about early American hotels is not mentioned in the passage? So you have to go through each of the choices and eliminate them. So choice A says travelers from abroad did not enjoy staying in them. Again, we didn't really get that sense. So that might be it. We don't know yet. So I'll just put a maybe. Next, for B, conventions were held in them. Well, yes, that's definitely true. This convention were held in these hotels. That's line 5. So that was used. People use them for business and pleasure. We see business and pleasure over here, also in line 5. The hotels were used for that as well, so for travelers and also for business. And they were important to the community. And yes, that is definitely true here. We see that this was a community attraction. They had a large stake in the community. And this is kind of like the central part. They were creators and creatures of the community. So here, this community got really important because of this hotel. So this was in line 2 and line 22. So the answer is going to be choice A. We don't have anything to indicate that travelers from abroad, from other countries, didn't enjoy staying in them. They probably did. They were just surprised at the power that these hotel keepers had, because they used to be this European immigrant, and then all of a sudden they got a lot of power. They rose up in the ranks. All right, and here's a summary of the annotations and a summary for the questions. All right, thank you everyone for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. All right, bye everyone.